There's a girl standing there, made just for me. Ooh, this love is so good. I can tell you how I feel about you. You're feeling kinda right now, honey. Something that they invented. She was on a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair. Early morning, rain or shine, all alone, sitting right by the phone. If you wanna see me, come and see me. Come and see me. Rescue. It's so good, deadly. I'm not so demanding. And I was thinking to myself, this could be heaven, or this could be hell. So turn off the TV, throw on a slow jam, and let's get busy. I want that you gonna know. Love is blind. A stranger to my eyes. Can't take no more.
Al, everything is under control.
Al B. sure says he didn't just fall into a coma, he was put there. And if that sounds dramatic, wait until you hear who he blames. Diddy, the same man who ended up raising Al's biological son and whose ex-wife, Kim Porter, mysteriously died just months before Al nearly lost his life. In a series of shocking interviews, cryptic posts, and now a new docu-series, Al B. sure is making it clear he thinks what happened to him and to Kim Porter wasn't natural. He claims they tried to silence him, and what he knows about her death is the real reason he was suddenly hospitalized, flatlined, and placed in a medically induced coma. You don't just go into organ failure out of nowhere, he said. I didn't just collapse. Somebody made that happen. He's even publicly called for a federal investigation into Kim's death, into his own health collapse, and into Diddy. And according to him, this isn't just about revenge. It's about the truth finally coming out. So the real question is, what does Al B. sure know that scared somebody enough to try and take him out? And why was Kim Porter writing about her fears for her life in a diary before she suddenly died? We'll get to that in just a minute, but here are the facts and receipts before we get started. Fact, Al B. sure was already 3 years ahead of the narrative. Fact, he wasn't just claiming Diddy was controlling and dangerous. He was linking him to life or death situations. With Al B. sure stating, and I quote, "They didn't want me to wake up," he said, "but I did, and now I'm telling everything." But that's not all Al B. was saying. Here's the receipts that makes this even more wild is the eerie symmetry. Fact, Kim Porter dies in 2018, officially of pneumonia. But close friends say she was healthy and active just days before. Fact, months later, Al B. sure starts posting cryptic messages, then falls into a sudden coma. Fact, in 2023, a memoir leaks, allegedly based on Kim's journals, repeating Al's warnings that she feared for her life and didn't trust the people around her. Fact, in 2024 and 2025, Diddy is hit with lawsuit after lawsuit, raids, and federal heat. Some accusers even mention silencing tactics and medical fear. The deeper you dig, the more the dots connect. And what started out as a tragic coincidence is starting to look like something much darker. Let's get into it. At first glance, everything seemed tragic, but explainable. Kim Porter's death in 2018 was ruled natural causes. The official report from the Los Angeles County coroner said she died of lobar pneumonia. No foul play, no red flags. Just another heartbreaking Hollywood loss. And when Al B. sure was hospitalized in 2022, slipping into a coma for over 2 months with severe organ failure, most people assumed it was due to his well-documented past health issues. After all, he wasn't exactly at the height of his fame anymore. He wasn't on the charts, and most people had long stopped paying attention to his life, especially compared to the billionaire power moves of someone like Diddy. So the story was easy to swallow. Two people, both connected to Sean Diddy Combs, just happened to face medical tragedies, months apart, nothing more than bad luck. Except, that's not what Al B. sure believes. In fact, he says that narrative, that this was all just coincidence, is exactly what they want you to believe. For years, Diddy controlled the public image. He was the mogul, the marketing genius, the grieving father, the man who stepped up to raise Al's son, Quincy, and build a blended family with Kim Porter that looked picture perfect from the outside. So when tragedy hit, people rallied around him, not behind the man who was quietly fading from the spotlight. But while Diddy was throwing White Dove memorials and doing emotional interviews about Kim's legacy, Al B. Sure was watching from the shadows, furious, paranoid, and convinced that something wasn't right. And when he nearly died less than a year later, he says he knew without a doubt this wasn't random. The misconception is simple. Most people believe the official narrative because Diddy's brand made it easy to believe. He was polished, powerful, in control. Meanwhile, Al B. Sure looked like just another old-school artist trying to make a comeback. And that's exactly how the misdirection works. Because if you don't question it, if you don't look twice, you'll never realize what was hiding in plain sight. Al B. Sure believes he was targeted, and not just in some vague spiritual sense. He says his coma was a hit. I didn't just collapse, he's repeated in interviews. I was fine. And then all of a sudden I'm in a coma? Someone made that happen. In late 2022, Al B. Sure was placed in a medically induced coma for over 2 months after what doctors initially called organ failure. He later revealed that he was undergoing multiple procedures, including gallbladder surgery and intubation, and at one point flatlined. But here's where it gets eerie. Before he fell into that coma, Al had already started speaking out about Kim Porter's death. He'd been dropping cryptic messages on Instagram, calling for investigations, questioning the pneumonia claim, and hinting that someone close to her knew what really happened. Then suddenly, he's gone, off the grid, in a coma, silenced. When he finally came to, he wasted no time. In an interview shortly after recovering, he suggested that someone tried to shut him up and said his coma was no accident. But the most chilling part? He directly ties Kim Porter's death and his own medical collapse to the same source, Diddy. He claims Kim had confided in him about her fears. He says she kept a diary writing down things that made her scared, things she didn't trust anyone else with. She had that journal, he said, and that's the key to all of it. A few months after she allegedly shared those fears, she was dead. A few months after that, Al was in a coma. To most people, this would sound like the ramblings of a man traumatized by grief or maybe even delusional. But here's the thing, Al B. sure hasn't backed down. Not once. In fact, he's doubled down. In interviews, in his memoir, in a Peacock docuseries, he's pushing this theory in front of cameras, audiences, and even government officials. He's not hiding in conspiracy theory forums. He's going mainstream with this. And now that Diddy is facing a pile of lawsuits, accusations, and investigations, people are starting to go back and ask, was Al B. Sure actually telling the truth this whole time? Because if what he's saying is even partially real, it means Kim Porter didn't die from pneumonia. And it means Al B. Sure might have lived just long enough to expose the cover-up. Here's where things start to get uncomfortable for everyone involved. Because if Al B. Sure is right, then we're not just looking at a medical coincidence. We're looking at a calculated effort to erase 2 people connected to a dangerous truth, and one of them almost didn't live to talk about it. And yet he won't shut up. He's been naming names, calling for federal investigations, and most notably, publicly shouting out Homeland Security at black tie events. That's not the kind of thing you do for publicity. That's the kind of thing you do when you think your life is still in danger. He's even increased his personal security, telling reporters that he's had to change how he moves because of what he knows. According to him, this isn't paranoia, it's a survival strategy. But what really adds fuel to the fire is how many people are refusing to talk about it. Diddy hasn't publicly addressed Al B. Sure's claims. Not once. Not a denial. Not even a dismissive shrug. And when Kim Porter's name comes up, he keeps it centered on grief, legacy, and emotional fatherhood. Meanwhile, Kim's alleged journal, the one Al keeps referencing, has never surfaced. But in late 2023, an anonymous author released a controversial memoir called Kim's Lost Words, claiming to have access to her private writings. The book was immediately met with legal threats, media skepticism, and public confusion over whether any of it was real. And yet, some of the passages in that book eerily mirror Al B. Sure's own claims. Mentions of fear, secrecy, and a sense that something was coming. Whether the book was fake or not, the whispers got louder. Because suddenly, Al's story wasn't a one-man rant anymore. It was part of a pattern that connects his coma, Kim Porter's death, and the wall of silence surrounding Diddy. And that begs the question, if this was all just coincidence, why is there so much effort being made to discredit him, ignore the questions, and keep this story from gaining traction? Why is Al B. Sure being treated like a threat instead of just a grieving ex? And maybe more importantly, why isn't anyone proving him wrong? What really sells Al B. Sure's claims isn't just what he's saying, it's how other people around the story are reacting. Let's start with Quincy, Al B. Sure's biological son, who was raised by Diddy after Al and Kim Porter split. In public, Quincy has always shown love for Diddy. He's called him dad, praised him for stepping up, and honored him as a father figure. But in 2024, Quincy posted a tribute to his late mother, Kim Porter, and fans immediately noticed the subtle shade. No mention of Al B. Sure, not even a hint. Instead, he leaned heavily into praising Kim, highlighting her strength, her independence, and her unspoken battles, almost as if he was trying to protect her legacy from something or someone without saying it outright. Some fans took it as a loving tribute. Others read between the lines and saw a fracture, a subtle distance between Quincy and his biological father, the man who's now accusing the person Quincy calls dad of being involved in Kim's death. That's a tension you can't fake, and it adds a layer of tragedy to everything. Al B. Sure might be trying to protect his son, while also trying to expose the man who raised him. Then there's the media. Despite how outrageous Al's claims sound, they keep getting airtime. He's been interviewed by TMZ, Good Day New York, Page 6, and even appeared in the Peacock docuseries that pulled no punches in laying out the accusations. If this were a random conspiracy theory, most outlets would have written him off, but they didn't. Why? Because the timing is too perfect. Al B. Sure's renewed media campaign came right as Diddy was facing a legal avalanche. Lawsuits for sexual assault, trafficking allegations, financial misconduct, and blackmail. One accuser even suggested that Diddy used private investigators and threats to silence people. And suddenly, Al's claims didn't seem so far-fetched anymore. He wasn't just a bitter ex, he was a possible witness in a much larger puzzle. And what really seals the unease? Not a single lawsuit, not a single accuser, not a single journalist has flat out said Al B. Sure is lying. They might say he's unverified. They might say his claims are unproven. But nobody is calling him crazy. And that silence, that's almost more damning than a denial. Because if Al B. Sure is wrong, why is everyone treating him like he's dangerous? If Al B. Sure's theory was just some bitter rant, it would have died fast. But what makes his claims even more unsettling is this. The silence is strategic. You can feel it. Start asking around about Kim Porter's death and you hit walls. People change the subject. Industry insiders give tight-lipped, no comments. Even people who were close to her, who posted tributes, who spoke at her funeral, won't talk anymore. And then there's Cassie, one of Diddy's most famous exes, whose 2023 lawsuit sparked an avalanche of new allegations. Cassie claimed she endured years of manipulation, surveillance, and emotional abuse. She painted a picture of a man obsessed with control, not just over people, but over narratives. And that word, control, keeps coming up in Al B. Sure's interviews too. It's about controlling the story, he said, and I wasn't supposed to be here to tell mine. When you put the pieces together, a disturbing pattern emerges. People who challenge the narrative get pushed to the margins, or worse. Kim Porter allegedly had doubts about what was happening behind the scenes. She was thinking of writing a book. She was, according to Al, scared. Months later, she was dead. Al B. Sure starts talking. He ends up in a coma. The so-called Kim's Lost Words book drops in 2023, claiming to be based on Kim's journals. It immediately draws fire. Legal threats, takedown notices, smear campaigns calling it fiction. The author? Anonymous. And probably for good reason. Even in 2025, with Diddy facing lawsuits and federal investigations, nobody with real power is touching the Kim Porter story. It's radioactive, and that's exactly why Al B. Sure won't let it go. He says the silence proves he's right, that nobody wants the real story told, that the coma wasn't a coincidence, it was a message. And maybe the most terrifying part is that message might have worked. Because aside from a handful of interviews, no one in the industry is backing Al B. Sure publicly. Not musicians, not executives, not even people who once worked with Kim. That kind of vacuum doesn't happen by accident. It happens when people are scared. And that kind of fear, that only shows up when someone has something really dangerous to hide. In hindsight, Al B. Sure's coma wasn't just a health crisis. It was a pivot point. Before it, he was mostly out of the spotlight. A legacy R&B artist, a few radio shows here and there, some touring nostalgia. After it, he came back with a mission, a fire in his eyes, and most importantly, a story he refused to keep quiet. And the timing of that story couldn't have been more loaded. Because just as Al was recovering and going public with his theory, Diddy's public image began to collapse. In late 2023, Cassie filed her bombshell lawsuit alleging abuse, trafficking, and surveillance. Within months, multiple accusers stepped forward. Allegations of coercion, NDAS, hidden settlements. The Department of Homeland Security even raided Diddy's homes in 2024, confirming that federal investigations were underway. Suddenly, the public wasn't just talking about Diddy the mogul. They were talking about Diddy the predator. And Al B. Sure was already 3 years ahead of the narrative. He wasn't just claiming Diddy was controlling and dangerous. He was linking him to life or death situations. They didn't want me to wake up, he said, but I did, and now I'm telling everything. What makes this even more wild is the eerie symmetry. Kim Porter dies in 2018, officially of pneumonia, but close friends say she was healthy and active just days before. Months later, Al B. Sure starts posting cryptic messages, then falls into a sudden coma. In 2023, a memoir leaks, allegedly based on Kim's journals, repeating Al's warnings that she feared for her life and didn't trust the people around her. In 2024 and 2025, Diddy is hit with lawsuit after lawsuit, raids, and federal heat. Some accusers even mention silencing tactics and medical fear. The deeper you dig, the more the dots connect. This isn't just a story about a health scare. It's a story about a man who came back from the edge of death with a message that some people would do anything to erase. And the louder he gets, the more pressure starts building around Diddy. From the public, from the press, and now from law enforcement. Because Al B. Sure isn't the only one talking anymore. He was just the first. The truth is, Al B. Sure should have been forgotten by now. He's a late 80s and early 90s R&B star, a relic from the New Jack Swing era, just another name in the credits of Quincy's birth certificate. But instead, he's become the loudest and maybe the most dangerous voice in the story no one wants to tell. He's not just accusing Diddy of being shady. He's saying Diddy was connected to Kim Porter's death. He's saying he was nearly killed to keep that truth buried. And now, in 2025, as Diddy's empire begins to crumble under legal scrutiny and federal pressure, those same claims aren't being laughed off anymore. They're being replayed, rewatched, reanalyzed. Because here's what no one saw coming. The man who was supposed to die in that hospital bed woke up. And when he did, he came back swinging, with diaries, documentaries, and a theory that just might be true. So ask yourself, if Al B. Sure was wrong, why are so many people trying to ignore him? Why are his claims eerily aligned with the lawsuits hitting Diddy now? And most importantly, what else does he know that he hasn't said yet?